Hey, sixth grade. So when we left off, Diggory had an important choice to make. He could listen to the witch and take the apple back to his mom and help her, or he could listen to Aslan and take the apple back to Aslan and help all of Narnia. And here's where we left off. For he now knew that the most terrible choice lay before him. "What has Lion ever done for you that you should be his slave?" said the witch. "What can he do to you once you are back in your own world? And what would your mother think if she knew that you could have taken her pain away and given her back her life and saved your father's heart from being broken, and that you'd rather run messages for a wild animal in a strange world that's no business of yours?" "I don't think he's a wild animal," said Diggory, in a dried up sort of voice. "He is, I don't know." "He's something worse," said the witch. "Look what he has done to you already. Look how heartless he has made you. That is what he does to everybody who listens to him. Cruel, pitiless boy. You would let your own mother die rather than—" "Oh, shut up," said the miserable Diggory, still in the same voice. "Do you think I don't see? But I promised." "Ah, but you didn't know what you were promising, and no one here can prevent you." "Mother herself," said Diggory, getting the words out with difficulty, "wouldn't like it. Awfully strict about keeping promises and not stealing, and all that sort of thing. She'd tell me not to do it, quick as anything, if she were here." "But she need never know," said the witch, speaking more sweetly than you could have thought any one with so fierce a face could speak. "You wouldn't tell her how you got the apple. Your father need never know. No one in your world need know anything about this whole story. You needn't take the little girl back with you, you know." And that's where the witch made her fatal mistake. Of course Diggory knew that Polly could get away by her own ring as easily as he could get away by his. But apparently the witch didn't know this. And the meanness of the suggestion that he should leave Polly behind suddenly made all the other things the witch had been saying to him sound false and hollow. And even in the midst of his misery, his head suddenly cleared, and he said, in a different and much louder voice, "Look here, where do you come into all this? Why are you so precious fond of my mother all of a sudden? What's it got to do with you? What's your game?" "Good for you, Diggs," whispered Polly in his ear. "Quick, get away now." She hadn't dared to say anything all through the argument because, you see, it wasn't her mother who was dying. "Up then," said Diggory, heaving her on Fledge's back and then scrambling up as quickly as he could, and the horse spread its wings. "Go then, fools," called the witch. "Think of me, boy, when you lie old and weak and dying, and remember how you threw away the chance of endless youth. It won't be offered you again." They were already so high that they could only just hear her. Nor did the witch waste any time gazing up at them. They saw her set off northward, down the slope of the hill. They had started early that morning, and what happened in the garden had not taken very long, so that Fledge and Polly both said they would easily get back to Narnia before nightfall. Diggory never spoke on the way back, and the others were shy of speaking to him. He was very sad, and he wasn't even sure all the time that he had done the right thing, but whenever he remembered the shining tears in Aslan's eyes, he became sure. All day Fledge flew steadily with untiring wings, eastward, with the river to guide him, through the mountains and over the wild wooded hills, and then over the great waterfall and down, to where the woods of Narnia were darkened by the shadow of a mighty cliff, till at last, when the sky was growing red with sunset behind them, he saw a place where many creatures were gathered together by the riverside, and soon he could see Aslan himself in the midst of them. Fledge glided down, spread out his 4 legs, closed up his wings, and landed cantering. Then he pulled up, the children dismounted, and Diggory saw all the animals, dwarves, satyrs, nymphs, and other things, drawing back to the left and right to make way for him. He walked straight up to Aslan, handed him the apple, and said, "I've brought you the apple you wanted, sir." Chapter 14. The Planting of the Tree. "Well done," said Aslan in a voice that made the earth shake. Then Diggory knew that all the Narnians had heard those words, and that the story of them would be handed down from father to son in that new world for hundreds of years and perhaps forever. But he was in no danger of feeling conceited, for he didn't think about it at all now that he was face to face with Aslan. This time he found he could look straight into the lion's eyes. He had forgotten his troubles and felt absolutely content. "Well done, son of Adam," said the lion again. "For this fruit you have hungered and thirsted and wept. No hand but yours shall sow the seed of the tree that is to be the protection of Narnia. Throw the apple towards the river bank where the ground is soft." Diggory did as he was told, and everyone had grown so quiet that you could hear the soft thump where it fell into the mud. "It is well thrown," said Aslan. "Let us now proceed to the coronation of King Frank of Narnia and Helen his queen." The children now noticed these two for the first time. They were dressed in strange and beautiful clothes, and from their shoulders rich robes flowed out behind them to where 4 dwarfs held up the king's train, and 4 river nymphs the queen's. And their heads were bare, but Ellen had let her hair down, and it made a great improvement in her appearance. But it was neither hair nor clothes that made them look so different from their old selves. Their faces had a new expression, especially the king's. All the sharpness and cunning and quarrelsomeness which he had picked up as a London cabby seemed to have been washed away, and the courage and kindness which he had always had were easier to see. Perhaps it was the air of the young world that had done it, or talking with Aslan, or both. "Upon my word," whispered Fledge to Polly, "my old master's been changed nearly as much as I have. Why, he's a real master now." "Yes, but don't buzz in my ear like that," said Polly. "It tickles so." "Now," said Aslan, "some of you undo that tangle you have made with those trees, and let us see what we shall find there." Diggory now saw that where 4 trees grew close together, their branches had been laced together or tied together with switches so as to make a sort of cage. The 2 elephants with their trunks and a few dwarves with their little axes soon got it all done. There were 3 things inside. One was a young tree that seemed to be made of gold. The second was a young tree that seemed to be made of silver. But the third was a miserable object in muddy clothes sitting hunched up between them. "Gosh," whispered Diggory, "that's Uncle Andrew." To explain all this, we must go back a bit. The beast, you remember, had tried planting and watering Uncle Andrew. And when the watering brought him to his senses, he found himself soaking wet, buried up to his thighs in earth, which was quickly turning to mud, and surrounded by more wild animals than he had ever dreamed of in his life before. It is perhaps not surprising that he began to scream and howl. This, in a way, is a good thing, for it at last persuaded everyone, even the warthog, that he was alive. So they dug him up again. His trousers were in a really shocking state by now. As soon as his legs were free, he tried to bolt, but one swift curl of the elephant's trunk around his waist soon put an end to that, and everyone now thought he must be safely kept somewhere until Aslan had time to come and see him and say what should be done about him. So the animals made a sort of cage or a coop all around Uncle Andrew, and they offered him everything they could to think of to eat. The donkey collected great piles of thistles and threw them in, but Uncle Andrew didn't care about them. The squirrels bombarded him with volleys of nuts, but he only covered his head with his hands and tried to keep out of the way. Several birds flew to and fro diligently, dropping worms on him. The bear was especially kind. During the afternoon he found a wild bee's nest, and instead of eating it himself, which he would have very much liked to do, this worthy creature brought it back to Uncle Andrew. But this was in fact the worst failure of all. The bear lobbed the whole sticky bee's nest over the top of the enclosure, and unfortunately it hit Uncle Andrew slap in the face, and not all the bees were dead. The bear, who would not at all have minded being hit in the face with a honeycomb himself, could not understand why Uncle Andrew staggered back, slipped, and sat down, and it was sheer bad luck that he sat down in a pile of thistles. And anyway, as the warthog said, quite a lot of honey has got into the creature's mouth, and that's bound to have done some good. They were really getting quite fond of their strange pet, and hoped that Aslan would allow them to keep it. The cleverer ones were quite sure by now that at least some of the noises which came out of his mouth had meaning, and they christened him Brandy because he made that noise so often. In the end, however, they had to leave him there for the night. Aslan was busy all that day instructing the new king and queen and doing other important things, and could not attend to poor old Brandy. What with the nuts and the pears and the apples and the bananas that had been thrown in to him, he did fairly well for supper, but it wouldn't be true to say that he passed an agreeable night. "Bring out that creature," said Aslan. One of the elephants lifted Uncle Andrew in its trunk and laid him at the lion's feet. He was too frightened to move. "Please, Aslan," said Polly, "could you say something to unfrighten him? And then could you say something to prevent him from ever coming back here again?" "Do you think he wants to come back?" said Aslan. "Well, Aslan," said Polly, "he might send someone else. He's so excited about the bar off the lamppost and growing into a lamppost tree, he thinks—" "He thinks great folly," said Aslan. "This world is bursting with life for these few days because the song with which I called it into life still hangs in the air and rumbles the ground. It will not be so for long. But I cannot tell that to this old sinner. And I cannot comfort him either. He has made himself unable to hear my voice. If I spoke to him, he would only hear growling and roaring. Oh, Adam's sons, how cleverly you defend yourselves against all that might do you good. But still, I will give him the only gift he is still able to receive." And this is where we'll stop for today. We're getting really close to the end. I can't wait to finish this book with you. Bye.